My fellow Toastmasters, Madam Toastmaster, Distinguished Area Governor, in 2016, the Death with Dignity Act is going to be on the Florida ballot. I encourage you to vote yes for this act. This is an act that allows a terminally ill patient with less than 6 months to live to choose their right to hasten the end of life. This is a care option. It is currently available in Oregon, Washington State, and Vermont. Oregon passed this law in 1994, Washington State in 2007, and Vermont in 2013. Montana and New Mexico has a derivation of this law. It is not a law to be taken lightly, nor am I doing so at this time. This is a law where somebody has less than 6 months to live, and you have to reside in one of these states to actually invoke the law. As a patient, you move to the state, you have less than 6 months to live, you visit your doctor. At that time, if you've decided that you want a prescription to help you with your end of life and to make your own choice, you have to verbally explain why you want to do this. And then you have written communication and forms that you must fill out. That form has to be witnessed by 2 people. Neither one of them can be your caregiver or your next of kin. After that meeting, you go home for 15 days. It's kind of a waiting period, a chance for you to think over your decision. You come back and you repeat the process. Verbally, you explain why you want to do this. And then you have your written communication. You have to fill out various forms and, again, have them witnessed. Within 48 hours, the doctor will call in a prescription for you, and you can pick it up at any time after that. From a doctor's point of view, they have to ensure that you are a resident of the state. They have to ensure that you are of sound mind and that you are doing this for you. This is not about, I don't want my family to incur medical bills. I don't want to be a burden to someone. No. This is about you and how you want to live your life the last 6 months of it. The doctor is required to have a consultant agree with him. The doctor also must explain to you the insurance issues. The nice thing about these states and this law is that your medical, your annuities, and your life insurance is not affected by your decision to invoke this act. The doctor also is required to make sure that you notify your next of kin and that they explain all potential care options: hospice, pain management, palliative care. All of this is a requirement of the doctor. New Year's Eve, Brittany Maynard had a debilitating headache. She went to the hospital. They did an MRI and found out she had a brain tumor. They did surgery on the tumor, took a whole bunch out. By April, they had found that the brain tumor has metastasized to such a strong degree that she had less than 6 months to live. Brittany and her family researched all kinds of options. The strongest option for them was radiation, at which point her head would be singed. There was no guarantee that anything would work. And most likely, Brittany would lose motor skills, cognitive skills, and verbal skills. She'd only been married a year, and her husband Dan decided that they didn't want to go through these radiation treatments. They moved to Oregon to invoke the Death with Dignity Act. Now, Brittany was a vibrant 29-year-old. She loved to travel. Matter of fact, with her girlfriend, she had even summited Mount Kilimanjaro. But she still had things that she wanted to do on her bucket list. She traveled to Oregon, and part of the hardest part of dealing with all of this was actually getting her residency. She had to get her driver's license. She had to have a house. She had to have bills in her name to prove that she actually was a resident of the state. That took more time than anything else. Brittany had already picked out her date of death. It was going to be November 2nd. I found out about Brittany in June because she was posting a number of YouTube videos about the process and why she decided to do what she did. Her death date, November 2nd, was specifically chosen because her husband's birthday was October 26th. She wanted to be there for him. She made it. Matter of fact, she even completed her bucket list, which was to visit the Grand Canyon. But on November 1st, with her husband Dan, her mother, her stepfather, and her best friend, Brittany had all of her friends with her, and she hastened and invoked the Death with Dignity Act. Brittany had an amazing life, and I think one of her statements at the very end is so incredibly poignant and strong. Brittany Maynard said, "Who has the right to tell me I don't deserve this choice, that I deserve to suffer for weeks or months in tremendous emotional and or physical pain? Why should anyone have the right to make that choice for me?" Now, in 1994, when Oregon passed the Death with Dignity Act, there was a strong outcry from religious groups. I understand these outcries. It's a mercy killing. Suicide is not allowed by the Bible. And I'm not arguing with any of that. If an individual feels for religious reasons or any other reasons that they cannot invoke this act, that is certainly their prerogative. However, is it their right to push that prerogative on everyone else? Or is it their right to let people live the life, or in this case, invoke the Death with Dignity Act? In conclusion, I believe a sense of peace in a time of fear, uncertainty, and pain actually acts as a safety net. And I know that if I was in Brittany's position, I would like to have that choice available to me. This is a last act of control in an otherwise debilitating disease and a world that has actually turned upside down. We will now have 2 minutes of questions and answers.
When does it go on the ballot?
2016.
And it's an amendment to the Constitution?
It would be a state law.
How many people would have to vote for this in order for it to pass?
60%
Of the voters
of the voters.
that turn out?
Yes.
Okay.
What other states are working toward making that law?
Montana and New Mexico have not invoked it or passed the legislative completely as Oregon, Washington, and Vermont, but they are working towards it. And in reality, almost every state uses this, whether they actually call it or not. How many of us have had someone who had cancer and their pain was so incredibly strong that the doctor basically put them on morphine. They went into hospice and they were just on the morphine drips. In reality, this happens everywhere, but the doctors don't necessarily tell you about it. But it is something that is happening in 48 out of the 50 states. It is documented that it has happened.
What protections are in place to make sure that the individual is not somehow compelled towards this course by a family member or a husband who just doesn't want to be bothered with dealing with the illness and things like that?
It's a very interesting question, and one of the requirements of the doctor is to do a full evaluation and conversation with the individual to ensure that it is their decision. Interesting enough, when Oregon passed this law, they thought they were going to get an influx of people, an unbelievable strong influx of people wanting to use this particular law. But in reality, 1 out of 6 people are approved for this legislation, and they have issued 1,172 prescriptions. Less than 750 have actually been invoked. So a number of people get the prescription and want the opportunity, but in reality, they don't follow through with it. But it is the doctor's responsibility, and if there is any question, they are required to have a psych evaluation.
Presents an interesting question of those that do not invoke using the medication, then do they take the medication back?
I do not know that
I mean,
answer.
it could be,
I don't think it's a requirement for them to return it, but there are still people out there that have it that could still take it.
I mean, some people obviously may pass away before they have the opportunity.
Certainly.
Or they may choose not to do it and pass away, and then there's a very lethal medication in the population.
That is absolutely correct. But we are coming to the conclusion of my 2 to 3 minutes, and I thank you for the time. Again, 2016, the Death with Dignity Act. Please vote yes.